So May 1st happened, and to be honest, I'm recording this before May 1st, but if you're watching this, I presume everything happened largely as expected. People stayed home, people withheld spending, people showed up publicly and said, in economic terms, that they were done being invisible. And that matters a lot because it gave people a chance to practice. It gave people a chance to rehearse the basic moves of collective power. It gave people a chance to feel what it was like to act together instead of being frustrated separately. And that rehearsal may have revealed something. It may have showed who was ready, or showed who was curious, maybe showed who was confused, and maybe showed where the infrastructure, if we're being honest about it, is almost entirely absent. So the question I want to sit with today is, what would it actually take to build something capable of applying that kind of power at a much larger scale? So first, I want to be clear about what a general strike actually is. There's a meaningful difference between what happened May 1st and what a general strike requires, and that distinction is the pillar here. A protest asks people to show up. A boycott asks people to withhold spending. A strike asks workers to withhold labor. A general strike asks enough workers across enough sectors to withhold labor in a coordinated way that ordinary economic life cannot simply continue around them. And that last part is load-bearing. A general strike is coordinated disruption at a scale that changes the balance of power. And disruption at that scale requires something that anger alone just simply cannot provide. It requires its own infrastructure. Now here's what the visible part of a general strike looks like. Workers across multiple sectors walk out at the same time. There are shared demands, or at least a shared bargaining position. There's enough coordination that people know when to stop, how long to stay out, and what risks they're taking, and what they're trying to win. The UAW understands this logic immensely. They've been urging unions to align contract expirations as close to May 1st, 2028 as possible, so workers in different industries reach their leverage points at the same time. That's treating timing itself as power. That's what organizing looks like before the action starts. And the walkout is the visible part. It's the part that makes the news. Underneath it is the part that usually gets left out of the conversation. And that's what I want to spend our time on today. Legal support is strike infrastructure. This is the piece that falls out of most conversations about general strikes, and it matters enormously. The NLRA, the National Labor Relations Act, protects a lot of workers' rights to engage in what's called protected concerted activity for mutual aid or protection. Strikes, workplace protests, collective action. Employers generally cannot discipline or discharge employees for protected concerted activity. That protection itself is real, and it has limits. Now, this is where people get hurt. A strike that violates a no-strike clause in an existing contract may lose legal protection. Healthcare actions can carry special notice rules too. Under federal law, a labor organization generally has to give advance written notice before a strike, or picket, or concerted refusal to work at a healthcare institution. And getting that wrong can make the action legally perilous. I should mention here, I'm not a lawyer. I have just done my best to try to learn about this stuff. So don't take this as legal advice, please. But just know this is all publicly available information that you could find. So, speaking of, public sector workers face different restrictions depending on the state. Secondary boycotts, where workers put pressure on businesses that aren't their direct employer, sit in pretty legally complicated territory from what I find. And many workers have even more complicated legal situations. Certain agriculture workers, domestic workers, gig workers classified as independent contractors, public sector workers, workers covered by different labor laws, and undocumented workers for sure, who may have NLRA protections on paper while facing limited remedies and much higher practical risks. So for a lot of people, the gap between technically protected and actually safe is enormous. A serious strike effort gives people more than a call for bravery, though. In effect, it tells people what the risks actually are, what protections exist and where they stop, who to call, what to document, how the group will respond if someone gets targeted. Legal support in practice means know your rights trainings before anything happens. It means labor lawyers reviewing contracts and identifying no-strike clauses. It means rapid response systems so that when a boss retaliates, and some will, there's a plan already running. It means legal observers at marches. It means immigration-sensitive planning that treats deportation risk as a shared movement responsibility. Courage is real, and so is rent. So is immigration status. So is a boss who fires first and asks questions later. And a movement that asks people to take risks has a responsibility to understand those risks first. Otherwise, the burden falls disproportionately on the people who can least afford to absorb it. Now, mutual aid is the heart of this all. Mutual aid is the organized work of meeting survival needs collectively so people can keep acting together. That means food, childcare, transportation, rent support, medication pickup, translation and language access, emergency housing, strike pay, wellness checks, care for elders and disabled community members, support for workers who get fired or disciplined for participating. The Seattle General Strike in 1919 is the best example most people have never actually studied, but it's remembered as a citywide shutdown. But the fuller story is that workers coordinated responsibility along with disruption. The strike committee coordinated essential services. Garbage that posed a health hazard was still collected. Hospital laundry continued. Firefighters stayed on duty. Workers organized food distribution systems that served tens of thousands of meals a day. They took responsibility for one another while disrupting the system. That's the model. Because here's what happens without that. After the first missed paycheck, the question itself just changes altogether. It stops being about whether people support the action in theory and becomes who eats, who watches the kids, who gets medication, who pays rent, who can safely stay out, and who gets picked up or who gets picked off when they're alone. Mutual aid is how a movement answers those questions before people are forced to answer them individually. Because individually, most people, just to be honest, lose. So a strike fund is the specific financial engine inside that broader mutual aid system. It's literal stored power. It's the movement admitting in advance that people cannot eat applesauce, cannot pay rent with solidarity slogans, and can't hold a line forever on vibes. A real strike fund has to answer hard operational questions as well. Who controls the money? Who qualifies? How fast can funds move when someone needs help? Can undocumented workers access it safely? Can non-union workers access it? What prevents the fund from running dry after the first media cycle fades? In other words, how do you continue to raise money? A new fund called Union Now has recently launched with exactly this kind of purpose, as far as I can tell, building a centralized strike fund that can supplement workers' income during organizing and support workers who are illegally fired while they contest that dismissal or look for new work. That's the right direction. Now, the question of scale is also very real, and the time to build these systems is always now. That's always the answer. When should I start this? Now. Care work, I would say, is very much a moral question, because a serious general strike has to decide what continues. This is where a lot of theoretical strike talk falls apart. Healthcare, elder care, disability support, emergency services, food access, child safety, and just other life-sustaining work require planning. Seattle 1919 understood this as well. Workers collectively decided which work sustained life and which work sustained profit, and they protected the first while disrupting the second. And that distinction requires a moral clarity and seriousness. It requires people in care sectors to be part of the planning from the beginning. It requires strike organizers to actually ask, if we walk out here, who gets hurt, and how do we prevent that? Now, the goal is disruption with responsibility. Anything else hands the movement's opponents a story that they can use very easily. Communications infrastructure matters more than most people realize, I think. Social media can announce a strike. It cannot run one. I was going to make a joke there about giving military orders through social media, but I'll refrain. Viral reach and trust are different things. A call that spreads across the internet tells people something is happening. It doesn't tell them which demands are real, which dates matter, what to do when police show up, whether their workplace is actually participating, or who's speaking for the effort. Misinformation fractures collective action quite easily, and so does the absence of trusted channels to get that information out. A general strike needs communications infrastructure built before the crisis. Workplace committees, union locals, neighborhood networks, faith community contacts, parent networks, hotlines, and local organizers who actually know, are people who actually know how to do this sort of thing. People need to be able to verify what's true, escalate what's happening to them as it happens, and stay coordinated when things get chaotic, because they will get chaotic in the midst of this sort of activity. And then there's the public story. History is full of strikes that showed enormous courage and still ran into the wall of unclear endgames. The British general strike of 1926 involved huge numbers of workers across key industries. It lasted 9 days. It ended without securing the coal miners' demands that started it. The trades union, Congress, just called it off. The lesson is that size alone does not guarantee victory. Staying power matters. You would do better off small and being able to sustain it longer. But also public legitimacy matters, and clear demands are critical. With clear demands, the action has a negotiating target. Opponents will call it chaos and laziness and foreign influence, economic sabotage. They'll say that you're funded by Soros, or whatever frame serves them in any given moment. The movement needs an answer that ordinary people can understand and repeat. It needs spokespeople. It needs story discipline. It needs to be able to say clearly, this is what we're asking for, this is who we're asking, and this is what we'll do if we're ignored. So where does all of this leave us? Well, by the time you're seeing this, May 1st will have happened. And what it actually was, if it goes as planned and if we're honest, I think, was a demonstration of where things stand. Some people are ready. A lot of people are curious. The infrastructure for something more sustained is thin on the ground. And that's fine, and that gives us a map. Because the real question coming out of May 1st is who you met, what organization you connected with, what workplace conversation started that hadn't happened before, what mutual aid need became visible in your specific community, and what legal question someone in your network needs answered. See how these get like person-to-person level specific very quickly? A general strike is the refusal to work joined with the decision to become responsible for one another while refusing to keep the machinery running as usual. That is a harder thing to build than a day of action. But it's also a more durable thing. So, insofar as it will have happened, May 1st gave people a glimpse of what collective power could become. The work is very much what comes next. If you need more granularity, more detail, let me know in the comments. I will do my best to link you to some things that might help. If there's specific asks that go beyond things that I have already generated or produced, I will collect them together and put out a follow-up video that can give them their fair due. I'll see you soon.